All right, what up? What up? Welcome to Believe in Rims, presented by FanDuel. Aaron Coscarelli back with you, joined by Ryan Anderson. How's it going, Rye?
Oh, it's going good, man. I just had a great talk with a Chiefs beat writer, Jesse Newell of The
I
Athletic,
know.
about Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson. And guys, go listen to it. I don't usually plug my own show here, but it is a really good talk. You
Can
know,
you just can you give us a little like cliff notes? Like, what are the Rams secondary? What are they in for?
yeah. So I mean, essentially, in terms of the on the field stuff, Jalen Watson is a outside corner. He's not going to move around a lot, but he's really good at what he does outside. And then with Trent McDuffie, he is just kind of an all around player, not just on the field, but off the field in the locker room. So, it's just it seems like from what Jesse was saying, this guy is a very special player. He kind of chronicled a little bit of a story of him making the move to becoming an NFL beat writer in 22 when those two guys joined the team. Trent
Mhm.
McDuffie was a first round draft pick, and Watson was a seventh round draft pick, and just watching those two guys grow as he grew alongside of them, and just what specifically McDuffie really offers in terms of a team leader and
Mhm.
a smart football presence. So really, really excited to see how the Rams defense will evolve within that, and the versatility that both of those guys will bring to the defense, and just kind of opening things up for them.
Did he at all suggest his own kind of disappointment that the Chiefs essentially moved on from those two guys? I mean, does that present a big hole for them?
I mean, yeah, from a football team's perspective, huge.
Yeah.
But it was just like it's the way he made it sound is they were stuck between a rock and a hard place where they just didn't have the money to bring both of those guys back because they just have big needs to fill. And
Mhm.
interestingly, they are one of those teams that has proven to have a really good acumen for drafting these guys, where the Rams don't have that kind of track record for the secondary. So the Rams kind of took a book from the Chiefs, a page from the book from the Chiefs, and it seems like the Chiefs are just going to see if they can patch together in the secondary like they have been doing. So I mean, you look at L'Jarius Sneed was a third round pick. Travarius Ward was an undrafted free agent. Those guys went on to play on major big contracts for respective teams after that. So yeah, they've got a good system over there for the Chiefs. So very, it was, especially with McDuffie, they wanted to, but from the way Jesse made it sound, it's just like there was no way they were going to be able to make the room to make him the highest paid cornerback in the league, which he is now.
Yeah. Well, speaking of highest paid, because we're going to talk all about how to fit certain numbers together. One of the things I feel like the rumors are vast. Baker Mayfield to the Rams. What's going on with the backup quarterback, Stetson Bennett? I mean, like, who are they drafting at number 13? Are they going wide receiver? Are they getting, according to Nate Atkins, they're not getting a running back. So let's sort of discuss and dive into like where the Rams are at now. What are we? What's 2 week, 3 weeks from the draft, right? April 25th, I want to say.
Yeah,
Um,
just over or just under a month, I think, officially.
just under a month.
Yeah.
So we'll find out, will the Rams stand pat and draft at 13? But let's just go sort of quarterback down, because we'll talk about the offense since we're not sure about the defense, and they're probably not going to get, although you think they might get another cornerback. Um, Baker Mayfield to the Rams is a rumor. And it's interesting because Baker came in, what was it, 2022?
Hmm.
And, had that crazy game against the Raiders. It was Monday Night Football. He had like a week with the playbook, less than that, I think, actually. Or maybe it was like less than 48 hours, I think,
Few
huh?
hours, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And he ends up winning like a walk-off touchdown. I mean, it was against the Raiders, but it still kind of shows, you talk about acumen, like Baker Mayfield, is he a fit for like, and maybe a stopgap while the Rams try to
Hmm.
find a replacement for a long-term answer? Because, a lot of the things that they say about this year's draft is really the quarterbacks or next year, like Archie Manning and those guys. What do you make of the Baker rumor?
I think at this time of the year, people just start throwing stuff at the wall
Mhm.
because, as we've mentioned over and over again on both of our shows, there is no plan after Stafford. Even if you want to say Stetson Bennett, his contract is over after this season as well. I think
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
right. Yeah. So it's there isn't without a plan, you gotta start speculating and looking around and looking under every rock to find what could be available.
Mhm.
So Baker specifically, he played he just turned 30. Um, he got he was played very inconsistent last season, and I think that's something that's plagued him his entire career. But I would say specifically
Mhm.
last year, that inconsistency was injury based. If you go back and
Mhm.
if you remember that Rams game, he got beat to heck in that game, and
But it wasn't his fault.
no. I mean,
Yeah.
they had offensive line issues. All of their offensive weapons were, and then if you want to talk about that one fateful season, he injected a little bit of enthusiasm and optimism for the Rams.
Mhm.
But that season, you can't really look to that season and take away too much just because of all the injuries that were happening, the headspace that McVay was in, which was not
Mhm.
a very a bright and optimistic type of place for him. So, I mean, I think Baker Mayfield fit for the Rams potential. Sure, I think he's a hard nosed player. I think he's a tough guy, and I think he has shown that he is a good quarterback at times. And if
Mhm.
you want to talk about him as a bridge, obviously not. Well, I mean, what are you talking about at 30 years old for a quarterback? He could play for another 8 seasons, depending on the level you're looking at there. But bridge guy. His I, quarterback contracts are so interesting right now because there has become this kind of middle tier of quarterbacks that actually Matt Stafford kind of falls into getting $40 million per year. Sam Darnold, Baker
Mhm.
Mayfield currently is making about the same as Sam Darnold, who just won the Super Bowl. Daniel Jones making $44 million. Patrick Mahomes making $45 million. He's not the highest
And
paid quarterback
and
out there.
that's
So,
and that's the thing that's interesting too about Puka, because Puka's
yeah,
gonna make more a year than Matthew Stafford if we're gonna just go based off the wide receiver market, right? So,
yeah.
like
Yeah, so that middle tier is an interesting place to find a quarterback at because it allows you
mhm,
to, some latitude within the cap. You aren't you aren't saddled with a guy that's going to take up 20% of your cap day one. So
yeah.
that is, I mean, that kind of thing interests me, and I think, obviously there's some rapport between he and Sean McVay. I think he's
Mhm,
a little bit inconsistent for McVay's tastes,
mhm.
but McVay has also been very spoiled with having a top tier quarterback in Matthew Stafford for much of his career.
Well, I mean, I guess it begs the question, what is it that McVay would sort of want in terms of the mindset, right? Like he always talks about character, he talks about the intelligence of his players, and to be able to kind of absorb the density of McVay's playbook, you're not going to just get in a rookie, especially when you have the rookies that play lesser, um, I would say complicated
Yeah,
positions, and
yeah.
they don't even see the field their rookie year. So, um,
It
we have a
become
lot of questions and not a lot of answers at this point.
well, and that's just where we are right now. I mean,
Mhm.
that is the ball of wax that we are dealing with, and and we can't you can't really do anything to change it. You know,
Right.
is Garoppolo sticking around? Is he the bridge quarterback? At this point, I'm like, is that what we're talking about? I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
if you get a guy like, let's say, Ty Simpson, you're gonna want him to sit for a year. Obviously, you would behind Stafford. Um, there's just, and this is why my urgency around this question has been, up towards the top of my urgency meter. Let's say we're at an 8 or something like that on the urgency meter, because it's not a simple answer. And I'm going to say this, Rams fans have been spoiled. They had, you know, Goff come in, didn't look great. McVay takes
Mhm.
takes over, looks much, much better. Goff is still a good quarterback. They went from Goff to Stafford seamlessly. You don't see quarterback for quarterback trades very often in the NFL. That it just does, like, that kind of transition doesn't happen. And then the way that Stafford has played it with McVay has been the best of his career. And you don't see that very often.
Mhm.
A guy over 30 playing at he just won the MVP at 37 years old. So, these are outlier situations. And I can't stress that enough, because it's not like Joe Burrow's just going to land in the laps of Rams fans.
Mm-mm.
You know, that
No.
it's
Yeah.
not like the next Peyton Manning is going to be drafted by the Rams necessarily. That could happen. Those things are on the table,
Yeah.
but those
I
are yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, I'm just saying the draft class everyone talks about is not this season, but the following draft. So if that's the case, do they burn a draft pick and get a guy like Ty Simpson? Where would they draft him? But the other thing that's you mentioned even earlier today was there's guys on the offensive line that need to get paid. We got to pay Byron Young, Kobe Turner, McClendon. Also, Jared Verse and Braden Fisk will be due for new contracts within the next year.
Yeah.
So how's this work? What, they raised the cap to 22 to 22 over 22. It went up 22 million, excuse me.
Yeah.
To what? 300 million or over? So it's like they have money, but how do they spread it around? And when you have signs like JSN, who's getting paid. What is he getting paid now at this point? 42.15. I mean,
Per year, yeah.
so do they hurry up and sign Puka?
Well, I don't think there's a lot of pressure out there. I think Zay Flowers is another wide receiver that's due for an extension. I don't think he's going to go over the JSN number. Um, and I think, the Rams kind of have, pushed some of these conversations a little later in the
Mhm.
summertime. You remember Kyron Williams was still talking about his contract extension at the
In
kickoff of
August
yeah, at the
or
beginning of
yeah.
training camp. Yeah.
Mhm.
Some of the Stafford conversations have gone a little too close to training camp for some of us. So, I don't think there's a ton of urgency. It's obvious. I like to say he's been playing on a fifth year, or a fifth round rookie contract, living in Los Angeles. This place is not cheap, from a tax perspective, from a rent perspective, from buying property perspectives. Um, and he deserves every penny he's going to get. And he is shooting to go over this number. How much over? That's an interesting question. So he's going to get paid what he's going to get paid. And an interesting kind of side note of this is the Rams on offense, at the very least, have not had to pay a guy top of the market money in a long, long time. I like Cooper Cup. He when
Mhm.
he got paid in 2020. I think they restructured after 2021, but he was never the top guy.
Mhm.
Aaron Donald, he was at the top interior defensive line in terms of payment, but he was never paid according to how good he was as a defender. Jalen Ramsey, I think, is probably the last guy that this team has had to pay top of the market money. And now you're looking at two guys. You're looking at Trent McDuffie and you're looking at Puka
Mm.
Nakua that are going to be sitting at the top of the order when the season hits. So, the money question, it becomes much, much more interesting. And then you look at you bring up a bunch of these free agents, and I have no doubts that they're going to make it work, but how they make it work is going to be super interesting. And not to go too far ahead, but Kevin Dotson has
Mm,
been the centerpiece of the Rams offensive line for the last several years since he joined the team, essentially. Just looking at kind of his on off splits when he's been on the field versus when he's been off with injury, 4.81 yards per carry with a 50% success rate on the ground with Dotson on the field. When he went off, 4 yards per carry and a
mhm.
36.9% success rate. That's huge. That's big. And that's just the running game. That's not, the pressures that Dedich allowed when we don't got to go into that. All that to say is he's got to be a high priority. They've already mentioned that they would like to partner with him. Um,
Yeah.
and he's just turned 30 as well. So
But it's like, "Hey, look what happens when I'm not on the field.
yeah.
Now you need to pay me." Like, that's exactly what
Yeah.
he needs to do. He just needs to say, "Hey, you wanna see my value? See what happens when I'm not available." And that's the thing that the Rams have actually navigated with precision is they didn't really have a lot of injuries, and at the end of the season, you had Devontae out maybe what, 3 games, you had Puka out 1 game, you had Dotson out 2 or 3 games before the
Yeah.
or right around the postseason. So that's like you have to weave in with precision that these signings actually work out. I mean, Tutu Atwell, the reason why it was such a big deal was because the Rams don't ever really miss on big contracts. They'd like that $10 million back in the bank account, but here we are. And I wanted to get your take on what Rams insider of the Athletic, Nate Atkins, said. I'm going to blow your mind right now. Rams rushed for the seventh most yards in the NFL with 2,152. Are you surprised by that? Why is that? I was expecting to be not so like polarizing because for some reason the Rams just didn't really run the ball a lot.
Yeah, it's an interesting statistic that they ran the ball more than they did in the past. I will say that, but the two guys that they have rushing the ball are not, they don't have Saquon Barkley type potential. They're picking up these yards the hard way. you know,
Mhm.
I mean, they are hammerheads. Blake Corum and Kyron Williams. Go look at their college tape. They've been doing this. They've been doing the same thing. Just three down back, just battering ram, picking up 3-4 yards of carry, and occasionally picking up 10 here or there. But not a lot of explosives from them. So they didn't do it in a exciting fashion. They did it in a just much more, I'll call it a football kind of way, where this
Mhm.
was like how football was played for a long time, just picking up 3 yards in a cloud of dust, as someone coined that term a long time ago.
Wait,
And
what is the term?
4 yards in a cloud of dust.
Oh, okay, that's a new
Just
one.
just the defensive line and offensive line just clashing, and a guy gets through for a couple, and tackled. So
Yeah.
that's how the season progressed for them. And that I was just going through Nate's article up at the Athletic, and he said one of the questions he got the most was about Jarquez Hunter and what and why. And
Who got the most questions about Jarquez? Nate
oh,
did?
Nate got, yeah, he said that was the number one questions fans wanted to know, because and the question he answered specifically is they got a home run hitter, they got a guy with explosive ability, but did not play him at all. And that's a huge question mark. And
Yeah.
obviously he's at the bottom, he's at the back end of the depth chart.
Mhm.
um and you know
Well, and Blake didn't play at all the year before.
yep.
So this is they ease their players in, but we as fans, let's say, are not sure. Nate seems to be confident that the Rams aren't going to draft a running back, but if we haven't seen any, he didn't see a single offensive snap. What do they have in Jarquez? And Jarquez is a different type of, less of a finesse, more of a brunt type running back. which is what the Rams would have needed. And I would imagine with Stafford not playing to an MVP caliber level season this year, we're going to see a little regression. They're not going to be potentially the number one offense. They might, but that's a high mark to repeat. So, don't you think they'd need another like strong running back to sort of carry the load for Stafford?
I mean, yeah, it's a fascinating question. I think. I mean, then you start talking about the Jeremiah Love type
Mhm.
conversation, trading up
Mhm.
for a guy like that. You know, being a difference maker at the running back position in the league right now, it's it's making a comeback. I would say,
Right.
I think running backs are now more important than they were just a handful of years ago.
Mhm.
Um, but having a stable of four after you just used only two guys, that's would I be surprised if they drafted a guy somewhere at running back? I don't, it, there's one difference making running back in this draft, and it's Jeremiah Love. It sounds like they'd have to trade up for him, and that would be that would be unprecedented. That would make national headlines. People freaked out when the Lions went after Jahmyr Gibbs, and as good as Jahmyr Gibbs has been, I mean, he hasn't won him a Super Bowl, you know? So, I mean, whereas you can say JSN, he went somewhere in the 20s as a wide receiver, offensive player of the year, or Puka Nacua in the fifth, you could even make that argument, has better positioned those two teams than Jahmyr Gibbs at 8, for the Lions. So, it's just a kind of a position calculus that you need to do. And, at that point, the Jeremiah Love trade up just becomes this like, wow, that would be insane.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
other than that, a type of move like that, it's like I think they should feel pretty set at the position. The only
Yeah.
thing there is health.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and that's why FanDuel is speculating on their website. FanDuel is suggesting that the Rams are going to make it to the Super Bowl and win. They're the favorite in terms of the odds there. And if you look at the last 2 years, every single year the Rams do one better than the year previously, right?
Wow.
So, well, they didn't get past the NFC Championship game this year, and then they didn't get past the divisional game or divisional playoff game the year before. So if we're
Yeah.
just gonna go ahead and say, you know
That makes sense. Logical progression. And listen, they've gotten so much better on defense that it's just,
Yeah.
I mean, even just with the two moves that they've already made. So, and Laurel
Yeah, and just
Murchison back with the team.
well, and even, like, their coaching changes really indicate,
Mm.
like, "Hey, listen, we're not gonna sleep on this anymore." Getting rid of some maybe older ways of thinking. They want to modernize. That was one of the things McVay would always say. He's like, "Look, I mean, the bummer is when you have a coach leave, you end up having to find a replacement. But what an opportunity to get curious about whether it's a college style coach or a coach from another system or a coach from obviously another division, in like a Cliff Kingsbury. I'm just the most curious to see how all these pieces get put together. And one thing we know, this season will not be boring. Like, we're going to have something interesting going down, as it just relates to this theme of the Rams needing to be all in. Um, you
Well,
know,
and that's a great kind of a talking point right now is how all in are they and how much are they
Mhm.
concerned about 2027 at like
Yeah.
today. Obviously, they want to build a sustainable franchise, but at the end of the day, if you have a window to get a another Lombardi trophy, a couple more rings on the fingers of these guys, you got to strike while the iron is hot. You
Mhm.
have to take this opportunity. And with Stafford, they've communicated it as far as Les Snead has communicated in any way. That's a year to year prospect. So they have no
Yeah.
expectation that he's coming back beyond 2026. Um, and that might be a 2027 problem. And so far, if you look at how they're addressing the team, it is all in.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is, like, that's also depending on how guys feel at the end of the season. I was actually almost surprised Stafford wasn't really burnt out. We saw those post NFC Championship interviews with Devontae and Stafford, and you're like, man, these guys are gutted. To go
Mhm.
into Soldier Field to like duke it out, Caleb Williams, you're like, and it's snowing, and then they come out, they win that game, and then they go and try to, battle it out at in Seattle. I'm like, I'm exhausted for them. How are they coming back?
Yeah.
They've got kids and a whole life, but I mean, that'll be that's what makes football great. Is like it's never guaranteed any given Sunday. So, anyways, well, I appreciate you. Thank you for jumping on and talking a little Rams rumors.
My pleasure.
We'll find out if Baker, the thing too, Mike Evans is now with San Francisco. He left. So, how disgruntled is a Baker, and would that impact maybe wanting, the Rams have an embarrassment of riches, right? You get McVay, you get the weather, you get a high quality organization.
Yeah.
You know, it's it's like people want to play in LA. Speaking of which, by the way, I'm in Miami. I don't know if you can tell by my backdrop.
Very tropical. Beautiful.
Very tropical. Um, but anyways, catch up soon. Thank you for jumping on. To be continued. Less than a month away from the 2026 NFL draft. So we shall see what the Rams will do at number 13 overall.